The big news, as everyone already knows, is that the Los Angeles Lakers, with Anthony Davis, top 5 center in the league, they say, LeBron James, one of the best players, if not the best players of a generation, still playing in the prime of his career, and former MVP Russell Westbrook, all 3 of them together as a duo, as a trio, as a team, have missed the playoffs. And that is now the second time in LeBron's 4 years as a Los Angeles Laker. Just things you hate to see, honestly. Just 50% missing the playoffs is not great, I would say. And for me, you could think of me as Elmo engulfed in flames. Just give me the chaos. I can't wait. I've already predicted what's going to happen, what I think is going to happen. Now we're getting news that Rob Pelinka is going to stay on 1 more year, which I think is totally bullshit. And I know you're tired of hearing about the Lakers. Truthfully, I'm tired of explaining how right I was. Truthfully, I'm tired about just completely saying this. I just feel like I've been saying the same thing all year. But as we go on and the facts continue to come to the surface and I have another way of just running up the score and taking another lap, I'm going to do that. You can't not discuss them. Before we get started, let's do a little trivia. Since preseason title favorites first became a thing in 1984, how many of the 2 top teams failed to make the playoffs? The answer is just 1. The 2021-2022 LA Lakers. And that is including the fact that they could have gotten in as a 10 seed, which is absolutely absurd as it is. Remember LeBron James said he hated the play-in tournament and then decided on the night that he could have kept the play-in hopes alive, that he wouldn't even play. He would be LeBron street clothes James. He would leave the game. We'll get to that. Yes, historically bad year in LA. And the season isn't even quite over. The fingers already being pointed. The fingers were pointed since week 1, but we got some new stuff, some new juju happening here. Frank Vogel reportedly going to be fired. He won't discuss that, really. He says that, kind of like Russell Westbrook, you can't ever predict the future, kind of stuff like that. Like whether he deserves to be fired or not, considering this roster construction, is another question, since it was Frank Vogel who desperately wanted to move Russ at the deadline, but was vetoed by Pelinka and, of course, the Rambuses. It's certain he hasn't coached well. It's certain. It's certain that he's not really that good. But ask yourself this, and we've had this conversation before, who could have made this shit show work? Who? The next news, and now you got Frank Vogel going out talking to The Athletic saying, I knew that this would be bad and not work before a regular season game even got played, folks. We went 0-6 in the preseason. We were getting waxed. I know that the preseason is meaningless, but that means something. We were getting waxed. The next news, reportedly Rob Pelinka has another year to figure out and right the ship, considering that this is completely his mess, and his mess alone. Why? Why would you give him another shot around the sun? Like, kick his ass to the moon. It's not possible to fix this. To me, this is just like another year of borrowed time. And if we're being honest with ourselves, which I think this is a place to be honest, the only reason he has this much slack is because Jeannie Buss finds Kobe Bryant to be like another sibling, and Rob Pelinka was hired simply because Kobe told her to hire him. So it would be like, I don't know, what's that called when it's like just sacrilegious to the dead? Like something bad, like bad juju to someone who's like a living legend and now, a dead legend. He is the only last connection to Kobe is Rob Pelinka's agent, slick ass, making stupid move after stupid move. AD and LeBron James make too much damn money and don't play nearly enough and don't play nearly well enough when they do play enough for this thing to work. I mean, that's just the case, even if it was just them. That bubble title, we know. We know now it was on shaky ground. We know that. The big question now is what to do with Russ and his $47 million. The options are limited, folks. A lot of chatter from AD and Russ together about running it back next year, but that, folks, should not happen, and I do not believe it will happen. There are two options. Trade him. To who? Or waive him. On one hand, there are a limited amount of teams that would even consider taking on Russ's contract. One of them apparently is Charlotte, who stuck with their own albatross contract in Gordon Hayward, who is owed $60 million over 2 years, played 49 games this year. That is around the same amount as street clothes, Anthony Davis. There's also John Wall, who has opted into his own $47 million contract next year with the Rockets. Seems incomprehensible that they would trade one for the other. So maybe will be willing to drop their demand for a first rounder for John Wall. And, of course, the Thunder, the place where broken players go to heal, the place where you just send players because they've got a plethora of cap space to just take on your gross, oversized, inflated players. They have $31 million in cap space right now and would only need to send back Derek Favors and a salary filler to take them on. So there are some possibilities. But the other option. But also about Charlotte, really quickly, a little note I saw on Twitter. Someone says, what, is Russ going to play center for the Hornets? How is that going to work? You got Oubre and LaMelo. I mean, you can't have another person with the ball that needs to have the ball in his hand. Terry Rozier, Scary Terry. It's scary hours if Russell Westbrook is there, and I don't mean a good way. The other option, which Mark Stein says is also being considered, is for the Lakers to waive Russ. Waiving $47 million seems like an incomprehensible decision, but the stretch provision allows them to pay him that sum over several years, which would lighten the cap hit a bit. Only having $15 million each year hit the cap. To me, I don't think Russ goes a goddamn place. I think they waive Russ, and Russ waves off into the sunset. I think he goes home to his family in L.A., and he has an amazing life. He works on his brand. He works on his philanthropy, because I think that this is not the business for him. I don't think that this business of basketball, I don't think he's ready for all that. And I definitely don't think he's willing to hang out without his family in Charlotte. No fucking chance. Russell Westbrook all year long is getting degraded and criticized and disparaged, and you ask him about it over and over, and he goes, listen, I'm just blessed. I get to go home and see my wife. I get to go home and see my kids. On the weekends when we don't have games, I see my friends. You think he's going to Charlotte? No chance. I think retirement. That's my guess. And with all of this popping, the architect of it all, LeBron, ditched the team, ditched them, left the building in the third quarter against Phoenix, the same team that Anthony Davis, which is just sweet justice, that Anthony Davis said that they would have been able to beat in the first round if it wasn't for injuries. What's that saying I always say? You can't really judge this Lakers roster quite yet until my man Kendrick Nunn gets healthy. And of course, Bron's getting murdered in the press. He hasn't said a goddamn thing about the fact. Excuse me. Sorry. Hasn't said a goddamn thing. Is it smoky in here? Does it feel smoky? It feels like dusty in here. I can see smoke in the room. Anyway. LeBron James hasn't said a goddamn thing to the media about the fact that they're not even eligible to go to the postseason any longer. He told us to keep that same narrative energy, and I have. And now Eric Pincus is reporting that internally fingers are pointing at LeBron as well for pressuring the front office to trade Russ. All of that to say things are in disarray. So how did LeBron respond to all of this chatter? By dropping his podcast, The Shop, and saying how much he liked to play with Steph Curry and Luka Doncic. Yeah, he's not thinking about making. Imagine if you had problems with your wife for a second, and like we want to know what's up with you and her, and then the way you respond to that, the little, issues and cooperation and what's happening with this marriage, you say, Halle Berry is fine as hell. Like, I love some Halle Berry. Like, Jada Pinkett. God, did you see her at the Oscars? Holy shit, I'd like to date her. I'd like to be her August Alsina. Like, what? Excuse me? You have a team. Anthony Davis is your teammate. How are you going to play with Steph? Why are you even saying this right now? Goodness gracious. The funniest thing, this was Steph's response. Steph said, well, he got his wish. He was the captain, and he's picked me for the last 2 All-Star games, so I don't know if that suffices, but I'm good right now. Whenever you get the interest or curiosity of what it would like to play with arguably the MVP kind of caliber dude that he is, one of the greatest of all time, cool, that's amazing. We can all live in that fantasy world. I mean, just so shady. And on top of that, they've had a rivalry for so long. So the fact that LeBron's come around to the dark side and been like, you know what, I'd actually love to play with Steph. And I love that Steph's like, he got his wish, ... I'm good. We can all live in that fantasy world. Safe to say, Steph has watched all of the teams that have been surrounding LeBron and been like, yeah, I'm fucking out of that mess. And to top it off, starting on August 4th, LeBron James will be eligible for a 2-year, $97 million extension that would keep him a Laker through 2024-2025. Is there a chance that either the Lakers do not offer him that contract? Doubtful. Or Bron chooses not to sign? Probably doubtful. He can sign during the season next year, so I'm not sure how that roster shakes out before deciding. One thing's for sure. Never, ever put it past him to bolt if a better opportunity comes his way. He's happened multiple times before, especially with his statements about the door not being closed on Cleveland and LeBron James. Like I said, I'm sick of tired about talking about the Lakers, but damn, they sure have so much drama that it makes it tough not to.